Game Day Sports Cards in Las Vegas is now streaming on the Drip app. Make sure you download Drip by visiting dripshop.live or follow the link in the description. Download Drip and start.
We are live.
All right, welcome.
Godfatherless again.
Yeah.
Going to be Godfatherless for a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Jimmy is out of town for a little bit, and then turns around. We have the National.
Yeah, National's coming up.
Which the Monday after the National, there will be no Game Day Huddle.
Right.
However, we will drop that Monday Game Days week at the National. So there will be programming that day. It just won't be the Game Day Huddle. We will be back the following Monday, though. So we will be at the National. We got a bunch of stuff planned for that. In fact, we just mentioned Drip. We will be streaming live from the National the entire week from the Drip booth. Our streamers will be live running shows. Plus, we will also be on the Whatnot platform as well. So we'll be busy that entire weekend. Should be a lot of fun.
That'd be cool to have like a small camera type crew following you guys around, and obviously edited so you don't get every single little thing. But that'd be kind of fun to see. So people that don't know.
I don't know that we could do every single thing.
No, I'm not going to record every single thing.
No, but thank you for joining us, Game Day Huddle. We come to you each and every Monday right here on YouTube.
Yes.
And thank you guys for being here. Of course, we talk the sports hobby, we talk the sports weekend, and we talk fantasy and investments with you guys here. And obviously, I think the big topic for us today is going to be the All-Star Game.
Yeah.
The All-Star Game coming up on Fox, 7 p.m. On Tuesday. And tonight will be the Homerun Derby. But kicking off the weekend's festivities was the Futures Games. Now, this is something I love. Because I love prospecting,
Right.
I love talking about the different players. I love getting into, what these guys, whatever it is, right? I just love getting into it.
It's fun for people that are in the hobby because they look at these guys and they immediately start looking up like, oh, does this guy have a card out yet? Or is this guy, like I got to watch this kid when he has his card out first because everyone starts to look for that.
Well, it's funny because we talked about it, and it's hilarious to me. How many weeks into the baseball season are we now?
Shoot, we gotta be April, May, June, July. So you're talking about like
16?
Yeah, 16 weeks.
16 weeks?
Yeah.
So 16 weeks ago, we talked about Shane Langeliers.
We did.
And now everybody's talking about Shea Langeliers.
Yes.
Because he hits a home run, and it was a big home run at the Futures Game, right?
And that wasn't in Las Vegas. That wasn't Aviator Stadium.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
That's
He
what makes it
didn't
more
have
fun.
Chavez Ravine.
Yeah.
And then you also had Robert Hassel showed out. You had home runs from Jason Dominguez, right? Which was obviously, that's a big deal because, again, in the hobby, he had kind of fallen off as a hobby darling.
Yeah.
And now he's kind of coming back around, and people are seeing the momentum and the movement from him.
And we talked about him at trade deadline, too, like a possible
A possibility. And that I believe that conversation is revisited even heavier now, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. Because there's definitely some news that came out this week that is going to kind of shake that up. But we had an interesting moment in the Futures Game, and that was in Major League Baseball this year. O'Neal Cruz made his debut for the season because he came up last year, right? Yeah. But we talked about O'Neal Cruz. We talked about how talented he was, and then he goes and 98 miles an hour from shortstop. Throws an absolute BB, right?
And you expect it because he's so big. He's 6'7". The dude's a huge guy, so you're like, oh, okay, that's why.
And everybody talks about this dude, right? Well, Cardinals prospect Mason Wynn fields a ground ball and makes a throw across the diamond that just gets everybody's attention. Well, let's take a look at it.
A guy this big, this young, with that kind of body control, where it's constant quality stuff and strikes.
So I know there's music bed behind that, but it was 100.5 miles an hour from mid-range shortstop to first base. And the announcing crew, if you watch them talking, it was like all of a sudden the breath was taken away for a second when they
realized
how hard that ball was. Because they're in a mid-casual conversation, they're talking, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, did you see that? Players are just incredible now. When you got guys in the infield positions, throwing 100 miles an hour across the diamond. You have pitchers coming up throwing 105 miles an hour. Like, our conditioning, the breed, like everything that we have as a baseball player was being shown out. This was probably, in my opinion, one of the most exciting of the futures games. And if you haven't watched it, I'd suggest go back and watch the game.
You're going to see names that you've been hearing for a long time that you haven't really got to see show out yet.
And they're doing it against the other best of the best. Mm-hmm. So those guys are showing up and to show out. It's a really neat way for Major League Baseball to kind of kick off the weekend. They do that, and then they have the celebrity softball game. So obviously the celebrity game brings everybody to the futures game, which is unfortunate because I wish Major League Baseball would do a better job of getting behind highlighting the best prospects in baseball are here.
Right.
As well as we start with the best prospects. This is their concept.
Yeah.
Start with the best prospects, end with the best players in baseball, right, on Tuesday.
Because, that should be the opinion of everybody, but, like, you're showing who the new face of baseball could be in the next couple of years. But again, we just talked about this last week, is that Major League Baseball has this great product, and they continuously drop the ball on it, I feel like they just don't. Not that they don't care, but I think they don't put any thought into it.
There's a huge opportunity there, right?
To me, Major League Baseball, the All-Star festivities of Major League Baseball and the All-Star game is, to me, more interesting than the Pro Bowl and football and all the little stupid
100%.
And the basketball. No one cares about the basketball anymore either. Hockey never really got any interest, right?
Yeah.
Baseball, to me, is the number one thing as far as All-Star breaks go. And they don't even do anything with it.
So,
important with it.
if I was to fix it, this is what I would do, my personal opinion. I would pick 3 to 4 people that are like the faces of it. I'd put them in a home run derby that would be featured on Monday with the home run derby, and that we would actually have the futures home run derby, which would just be a finals. Right? It would just be the four, a semifinals and a finals. A round of four players, a round of 2, and a champion, and that would like lead up to the actual home run derby coverage. Right? So I would do that, and then the second thing that I would do is I would take those 4 and I would push out the fact that here's our future faces of Major League Baseball. I would make them super available. I would put them in media to make appearances prior, pulling them out of their minor league team a day or 2 early that you can't do with the Major League players. You can do with the minor leaguers here. This is the perfect opportunity to open the door for the next wave, to introduce them. So you get introduced to a Jason Dominguez. You know one thing we haven't been able to do? Put TV time on his face since he's now kind of picked it back up. Shea Langeliers is a really likable player for an organization that, let's be fair, is suspect right now at best with the moves that they've made and are about to make. Right? Because, obviously the A's have him, and, that's a nice thing to showcase one of your small market teams an opportunity. When you have guys playing in this game, like a Robert Hassel, who will be called up later this year by the Padres, to actually have him be seen in Southern California.
Because right now, all you have to go on is writings from guys that you don't really know, that this guy says, hey, this kid is good. This kid is really likable. And you have to just go with it and okay, they're saying this guy is likable.
And then on top of it,
put him on TV.
The angle with this whole thing would be national pride. So then they could also take and highlight the player's home country at that time, where he comes from. Do they have a baseball development? So this is an area like Major League Baseball, in my opinion, is just getting wrong.
Because they're already up there, and they're not doing the right things from a fan base. You know what I mean? Pump that up. This is a time to get hyped. The All-Star game is still good in baseball.
Well, and it is, and that's the thing. Because Major League Baseball's All-Star game is so good, this would allow them an opportunity to be able to. So it kills me to see that they had such a great product on the field. And I'll bet, I will go around this room and ask everybody in our shop who's locked in, who watched the Futures game, and none of them will say they watched it. You know who didn't watch the Futures game? I didn't. I didn't watch the game. I went and I watched all of the highlights and some of the snippets out of it and some of the things on players that I knew that were there and saw what they did. But I didn't watch the whole game.
They didn't even promote it, Steve.
That's why.
They didn't even promote it.
I didn't watch it because I didn't know when and where it was.
Timeline.
Right.
It wasn't like all over Major League Baseball.
That should have been a free Yahoo Sports push out.
There was nothing about it.
Right. And that to me is where Major League Baseball is really getting it wrong. This is also, I think, the same thing that the other major sports could probably pull off and do a better job of. And I'll have to tip a cap to the NBA. I think the rookie game for the NBA is probably the best of these,
the
right?
rookie game to me is more important than the actual All-Star game where the guys aren't playing.
Of course, the rookie game is because you're seeing actual NBA players playing in that against each other. And I get it, but Major League Baseball has an opportunity here. They don't take advantage of it. And again, I'm incredibly disappointed. I really wish that they had taken care of that. Now, superseding the All-Star game, you had a bunch of announcements that came in and out for the week. You have pitchers who are not going to be in the game that we thought we were going to see. You had a bunch of relievers now that are in the game from starters that are not in the game because of either their appearances before or after. You also have guys that were hurt, which actually opened up the door for a couple of guys I think were deserving. One of them is Mike Trout is not appearing, which is unfortunate for baseball. Trout will not be there, at least playing in the game. I'm sure Major League Baseball is going to get him there. He'll be there on the Home Run Derby tonight laughing and seen on camera on purpose, right? And probably Harper too, right? Both those guys will probably be there hamming it up. But the thing is that this is a huge hit. Southern California, the Angels were right there. This was going to be the Mookie and Trout show, right? Now we're not getting that. But Ty France did make the roster because...
that's good.
And I think that's great because Ty France is probably the best. I would say him and Goldschmidt are probably the two best hitting first basemen this year. Overall, you might argue, there's Choi and there's a couple of these guys, even Hosmer, who have decent averages, but these guys are actually hitting in the clutch and coming through.
I think it's well deserved.
So it is, and especially on a Mariners team that just ripped off 14 straight. Which is another conversation that we'll talk about here in a moment. But the big discussion was about Juan Soto. Now, we're going to get into Juan Soto, but I had a really funny highlight that we found, and I'll kind of explain this where this kind of sets this whole thing up.
Tells him to go and take your base. Yep. The hit streak will come to an end, but Soto does.
Wow. Don't be over the eyes.
So apparently Will Smith and Juan Soto have been getting into it over multiple games. They're playing against each other on a regular basis. Lefty specialist coming out of the bullpen. And Juan Soto being a left-handed hitter, he's seeing him a lot. Soto's had some success against him. He's come through in some big moments. And apparently Soto has said a few things to him about not pitching to him. And then he walks him again. So Soto takes his sweet time, and Will Smith. This is going to blow up. We will see this back again this season. We will probably see him. Yeah, we're definitely not seeing this happen in the playoffs. We will probably see Soto thrown at some point.
Oh, sure.
If we get a Nationals matchup against the Braves before Soto is most likely traded. And here's the reason that comes to discussion. So if you recall, about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, I sat here on this program and I said, the Nationals have to trade Soto. They're not going to be able to keep him. I know there's this far-fetched belief that they're going to. They're not going to be able to keep him. There's no way he's going to do it. And I couldn't have been more right.
He turned down the offer.
He turned down $444 million over 15 years. To put it in perspective, right? 6 years into that 15-year contract, which is where we're looking forward to with Harper. Harper, 6 years in, will be 32. Juan Soto, 6 years in, will be 29. Okay? Turns down this deal. He would have only been making $3 million more in his 6th year than Harper would have made in his 6th year. and inflation and all these numbers that you put together.
Right.
So it's a hard pill for us to swallow, to sit there and say this guy just turned down $500 million plus whatever. And my argument is, what is another $50 million going to do in difference that 444 isn't going to do for you now?
But you play a game too. You're playing a game,
right? And someone goes, "Oh well, it might be the fact that he, has all these, the taxes and everything on it and all that stuff." And I was like, there will be an endorsement that will pay for all those taxes. He will get this contract money. His endorsements are going to go through the roof, right? Especially when he hits big market, and we expect that's going to be the case. So the question becomes with this. This is a huge piece, right? This is a big, big piece. And this has huge implications, right? Which is, we now know Soto's going to get traded. Soto's only going to get traded to a team that's ready to compete,
right?
That has the assets to move. The Nationals are not taking draft capital. They're not taking draft picks.
Okay.
The Nationals are going to want players that are near Major League ready for teams that are currently ready to compete. Where does he go? Where does he fit? We know the Mets.
There's so many teams that
we know the Yankees.
Yeah.
I would argue and say the Padres. The Dodgers will be players, but the Dodgers, I don't know, have enough
minor league,
enough in their minor league system that's close to ready. Maybe some pitching, right? Outside of those four, what other teams that are in competition have the capital to move with mortgaging? Because when you're mortgaging a future, you gotta understand what you're doing, right? This was the gamble that the Giants took with Chris Bryant. This is the gamble the Mets took with Javi Baez, that they were going to be able to give up some future to go ahead and be able to re-sign the guy.
Does Boston have enough?
Boston's a really interesting spot.
Because they have guys that should be performing that aren't, that maybe could use a change of scenery. So to me, Boston's one of those wild cards.
Boston's a really interesting
Not a leader,
spot. Because Boston could essentially move Major League talent and Bobby Dalbec. They could move, and there's going to be people that don't like it, Xander Bogaerts. Right? Which is a much more realistic signing for the Nationals.
Right.
And then give up some of those young players, and one of them they'll probably have to give up in a package like that is probably Marcelo Meyer.
See, that's
right?
That's what I mean.
And they would probably have to give up Marcelo Meyer. They have Jeter Downs called up now. Do they think that he is going to be the shortstop?
Correct.
And worst case scenario, the Red Sox have a insurance policy because they have Trevor Story playing third base, who could be their best shortstop.
Right.
So because of that,
yeah,
they're the interesting team, and they're the wild card in this that I think.
To me, that's the wild card. They're not the leaders. They're not the one that's going to be like top of the board list. Obviously, that's going to be the Yankees because that's how good they're doing. They would put him over the edge, obviously. But yeah, Boston to me is a wild card.
So other teams that you'd want to at least bring up right in the conversation, you'd want to talk about the Braves, but they're not trading them in division. Not going to happen. No, the Braves have a lot of young players that they could do some stuff with, but I don't know if they have enough of like the flashy. Right. So I don't know that that's going to happen. We're 100% positive he's not going to be a Tampa Bay Ray.
No.
Right? No. And we know he's not going to go. And even though Tampa could move some stuff. They could package Vidal Brujan, a couple of the kids they have coming up. They've got some shortstop. They really are deep to be able to do it. The Twins are interesting, but again, the Twins aren't going to be able to sign long term, and I just don't know that the Twins are willing to mortgage a future. We've never seen that with them, where they would mortgage the future of prospects to obtain a player. They spent some money with Carlos Correa, and will they be in the action? They'll make an offer to Soto this year probably, right? They'd be dumb not to. But that doesn't mean that they're in it now for him.
No on Blue Jays. Too.
Right, Blue Jays is going to be really tough because, again, Blue Jays' best prospects are Major League ready and ready to go now. And outside of Beltre, they don't have another standalone prospect that really blows your doors off, right? Padres could move some stuff. The Padres, though, I believe there's no way they would do a trade deal without knowing they could sign him.
Right.
And then if they did, what would they have to move off the roster, right? What would they have to move off the roster? And then my belief is Hosmer would have to go in that deal. They would probably have to eat contract with Hosmer.
Right.
So because they would do that, because then what you would be doing, and then you'd probably see C.J. Abrams. This is what I think the deal would be. C.J. Abrams, Major League ready. He would come over and play immediately. You would have Robert Hassel would go, and probably James Wood in that deal, which is basically some of the top pieces the Padres have young coming in, and probably a Victor Acosta. I mean, that's literally the haul that would probably come back, and you're probably looking at 4 starters.
But putting Juan Soto with Tatis,
Machado, he would want to be there, and that they would definitely be a favorite to sign him long term if they can work the money portion of it out against the salary cap. That's the key. So that is a possibility. I think it's a little more far-fetched. The Yankees are one that will mortgage a future and go out and figure it out again. Right? The Yankees do have pieces to move. Do they want to move them? I would argue they don't. But with what they're doing and their need in the outfield, the only question is going to be, are they going to be able to offload Joey Gallo? The only way the Yankees could do that deal is to move Joey Gallo somewhere and to be able to, because at that point, they would be log jammed in the outfield, right? You're not DHing Judge at this point, and the reason you're not is because he's good defensively, right? So I think at this point, like, you're willing to go ahead and move Gallo. He's not hitting well. He's hitting home runs, but he's not hitting well.
Right. Well, a lot of the lineups only batting in the 220s, 230s, but they're hitting home runs.
Right.
So
and who's going to take Gallo on and the contract? Yankees have to eat some of it. So the Yankees are probably the leader.
I think they are.
I believe, though, that you may see the Mets step it up. The problem with the Mets stepping it up is that the Mets are going to have to give away Major League ready arms, and they're going to have to give away multiple because they don't have the position players to do it with. The Giants were the sneaky one, right? Because they have a ton of pitching that's ready, and they're deep at the catching position, so they could move a guy like Bart. But right now the Nationals are happy with Keibert Ruiz, which we talked about. Keibert Ruiz was going to be really good. So, he's been one of their better players on the National, right? Nationals are going to have an interesting turnover there because they also have Josh Bell who can be moved. So this chip will go because if Soto goes to the Yankees, if this happens and they send Volpe and Trey Sweeney and Oswaldo Cabrera and a couple of the arms back, right? They do that deal. Can the Yankees then sign Soto and keep Judge? So by default, the winner in this whole thing might actually be the Mets when it's all said and done if the Mets don't get him. And if the Mets do get him, the Mets are actually in a position to be able to sign him long term and still go after Judge because of where they're at contractually with some of their bigger name players are a little deeper into contracts like Francisco Lindor and those guys. So they're already kind of locked up and taken care of. So I don't know. It's an interesting.
I can't wait to see because I heard that he was actually upset that his name was being brought up so much right before the All-Star break. So he may have a little chip on his shoulder.
He's definitely going to have a chip on his shoulder.
Disappointing season so far as batting average goes.
Right. And when you see him being playful on that walk like that and you see him doing those things, it makes you believe he most likely is one of those players that is definitely.
He doesn't look like he's stressing out.
Yeah, he's not at all. Like he's okay with where he's at. Cool. He knows he's not worried about what's happening, what's going on. He knows where things are going to go. So things that are interesting. One of the players that teams, I guess, that has been really interesting has been this ascension by the Baltimore Orioles, right?
Yeah.
They brought up some of their prospects. You got guys like Jorge Mateo, who's starting to play like we thought he would when he was with the A's and the Padres. Here he is now actually playing well. You've got guys like Trey Mancini, who's being talked about potentially being shopped, and I believe they're still probably sellers.
Right.
But it's a really good story to this point.
But they're starting to play well, and I think that not everyone's shocked about it. I think that we're just shocked that it happened as fast as it did. We thought this would be like a year or two.
Yeah. And then, because they've moved so many young players up, right? And you've got Cedric Mullins, who's, he was an all-star last year. He's playing really well. Adley Rushman's there. You've got the Ryan Mountcastles. Like, they've got a really nice core.
Young core.
Still can't pitch well, but they're pitching better than they had been.
Right.
But they had a day this weekend and a little bit of surprise, but it was kind of neat. So let's take a look at it.
With the first pick of the 2022 MLB Draft, the Baltimore Orioles select Jackson Holliday, a shortstop from Stillwater High School in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Yeah, Jackson Holliday's dad is Matt Holliday, a perennial all-star, Baseball America's 2022 High School Player of the Year.
Jackson Holliday, shortstop, Stillwater, Oklahoma. As a player, I'm versatile and I like to play hard.
Jackson Holliday reacting to the news with his family in Stillwater. As you see, finding out the youngster who hit .685 with 17 home runs this year. 17 home runs, hit .685. He broke GT Realmuto's national single-season record for high school baseball with 89 hits.
So Matt looks like he's ready to go play again.
Yeah, I know. He looks pretty yoked, actually.
Yeah, he looks like he's good to go. But Jackson Holliday, Matt Holliday's son, drafted first overall. A little bit of surprise. The story is the team actually called, right? So Baltimore called. Matt answered the phone. They told him that they were selecting him first overall. Hung up the phone, came back over, and then he said, I guess we'll see what happens. Sits down, and you saw live there was Jackson actually finding out he was going first overall. A lot of times the guy knows before.
Yeah.
The kid didn't know this time, which was great. Interesting Major League Baseball draft.
Yeah.
You had the Orioles that we just talked about selecting first, taking him. A shortstop. Interesting thing, though. They just drafted in the second round a shortstop who is quickly moving through the farm system that they think is the future. And I have a little bit of a hot take on this coming up in the plus or minus section on this. But Gunnar Henderson has been moving through. And so for them to go out and to draft a shortstop that speculatively is probably 2 years from Major League ready, I don't know, because you're going to have a guy there the year before. So I don't know if they're drafting him as potential trade capital down the road.
Right.
What their plan was there, especially in an organization that needed pitching. There wasn't a lot of pitching in this draft, though, and that's where it started to fall.
Well, the shock was that everyone thought it would be Drew Jones, who's also the son of a former Major League.
Yeah, Andrew Jones. Yeah.
He ends up falling to second to the Diamondbacks, and a lot of the speculation was that he was going to go first. So I was a little bit surprised that Jackson Holliday, but to have two, former Major League Baseball players' sons go, 1 and 2. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of pedigree there.
Right.
Sometimes you have teams that draft for need, and sometimes you have teams that draft for what they feel is the best person available, and they'll just figure it out when the time comes.
Well, that's the Red Sox move, right? The Red Sox always draft 100% best available, put 13 shortstops in their organization, and trade 9 of them off.
Correct.
Right? But in this case, this is an organization that needed to fill needs. And this, unless it returns them a huge haul down the road, and we'll wait and see.
Maybe it gets them arms.
It doesn't fill it. However, my other thought is, are they not as sold on Gunnar Henderson as a lot of the baseball community is?
Maybe.
They know more about him than anybody else. Right. So I don't know if that's the case or not, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but it was interesting. So Jones goes second overall. Goes to the Diamondbacks, very interesting organization. They just graduated Dalton Varsha. They got Seth Beer, who's been up and down, but looks like he's going to be a good Major League player. Right. You have Jordan Lawler probably up next year. His numbers in long A and coming into the moves that he's making through the farm system, I would anticipate that we will see him, maybe if it's not early next year, by the end of next year, so Lawler will be up. You have a couple of other players there. You obviously have an all-star in Marte, who is an absolute stud that's there. So they've got a nice core they're building around, and they were drafting for need in that spot. They got lucky there because they were going to probably go second base.
Right.
And then that fell to them, and they're like, wait, what?
Right.
What?
They were kind of shocked, yeah.
And the reason being is because once that jump for Holiday was made, Drew just automatically became a no-doubter for the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
And they had their eyes on another kid, right, who ended up going 4th overall.
Right. That was Tamar Johnson.
Yes.
He ended up going to the Pirates. That's the second baseman. You were just talking about second base needs. He goes on to the Pirates. So, yeah, I think that number 1 pick, Jackson Holiday, kind of threw things for a loop.
It did.
Because Drew Jones was everyone's,
number 1.
Number 1.
Yeah.
The guy's got 30-30 potential. I think that he should have gone number 1, but like whatever Baltimore saw in Jackson, they liked, and they went with it. But that kind of had the trickle-down effect. The Rangers, number 3, shocked everybody. Like you took a pitcher who they said in every consensus had him going 15th or later.
So here's the thing, right? Kumar Rocker, if he doesn't get the shoulder surgery right after his season at Vanderbilt, right?
Last year.
He probably is the number 1 overall pick by a landslide. He is, as far as arm talent goes, we haven't seen arm talent since Hunter Green. This type of arm talent.
Right.
His stuff is absolutely electric. And on top of it, he's got a little Marcus Stroman in him where he's a little angry, a little chippy, talks a little bit, says some things. You know what I mean? And that's actually good in the world of pitchers.
Yeah.
It actually, in my opinion, makes Kumar Rocker very collectible.
Well, he went 10th last year, the Mets.
Right, and the Mets.
Because of surgery,
right.
Check out medically, and then now he plays independently.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and goes number 3 overall.
Which is showing some kids that are mid to late first rounders that if they think that they got drafted like under a slot, they could literally sit a year out, go play independently, show that they're all good, and come back in the next year's draft, right? And the difference between late first round money and second round money, it's so close it doesn't matter, right? So I don't know, but it definitely started a whole thing. Now the kid that obviously the Pirates picked up, the Pirates, it's a really interesting concept to me. And what's interesting to me on that concept is that the kid is probably the best pure hitter in the draft.
Yeah.
He may not be a huge numbers guy, like as far as like he might not be flashy with home runs or something like that, and we'll see. He's a little undersized, but
they say he's 5'10", which is going to be like that's the only knock I saw.
They would kind of like him to be 6 foot right now, and he's 5'10", and he may not have hit a growth spurt yet. Hold on, he might be 6'2" by the time he hits big leagues.
Don't know.
However, he's a second baseman. He's a great pure hitter. He's actually got graded with Major League Ready hitting as a Major League Ready hitter.
Yeah.
Which means he will move quickly in an organization who actually can use guys to move quickly.
Yeah.
They're about to move Brian Reynolds. We know they're going to move them. Henry Davis will be up next year at some point. You'll see this kid probably up within next year, maybe 2.
Yeah, they kind of remind me of the Orioles. They have like a lot of young talent that is like chomping at the bit and could be in the next year or 2. Make some noise.
They might have gotten the steal of the draft.
Yeah.
That's what might have happened once the Rangers did this.
Yeah.
Because this is who was going to go number 2 overall.
Yes. And he drops to number 4.
And he goes 4th. Right? We've seen it happen. You know, a lot of times you don't see the best player out of a draft class come in the first 5 picks.
Other teams are thinking.
But because we have so much more video, so much more analytics, so much more FaceTime with these kids have a tendency to pan out a little bit better. Like, we all know Jordan Lawler and Marcelo Mayer are going to be good. We all know this kid Jackson Holiday is going to be good.
Yeah.
We all know these kids are going to be good.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind that when Kumar Rocker comes up, and he's probably closer to Major League Ready than anybody on this,
Having set up that
right? He probably is. And on top of it, they have Jack Leiter as well that they drafted. So, again, you're going to have some discussions, some talk about this. But it was really interesting from a standpoint of how the draft was put together, because I just don't think that the Major League Baseball insiders, they knew what was going to happen in this year's draft.
They did not. One shout out before we move on though from the draft, number 17 overall, Justin Crawford. Big shout out to him.
Yes.
The Bishop Warmer guy. It's a local kid.
Yes.
He went to the Phillies, center fielder, which they obviously need. And I know he's coming out of high school, but another son of a former Major League Baseball.
Yeah, Carl Crawford,
Carl
right?
Crawford, yeah.
And then obviously now Vegas is now a direct pipeline to the Phillies. Is that what this is?
I think we're a feeder
right?
program.
We put Harper there, and then all of a sudden here they come.
No, Stott is
Bryson Stott.
So we're a feeder program.
Yeah, so Phillies are definitely active in the Las Vegas market. Shout out to the Phillies.
Yeah.
No, they are, but pretty cool, pretty neat. So the draft was fun. We're going to take a moment. We're actually going to get into Jay's fantasy roundup. And the reason being is because this edition's a little different, Jay.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to talk about, and this is going to be a real quick, I saw this blurb come across, and usually where there's smoke, there's fire. We've talked about this before. Leonard Fournette, he played on back-to-back one-year deals.
Good old
he
Leonard
obviously
Fournette.
proved that he could be a guy that Tom Brady trusts. And everyone remembers playoff Lenny, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's what got him this contract, right? They finally go out and give him a 3-year deal. Tampa Bay says, hey, you're going to be our guy. He's giving you a 3-year deal. They let Ronald Jones go to the Kansas City Chiefs. He shows up, doesn't show up for voluntary OTAs.
Right.
Doesn't show up.
Which is weird in that moment because he just signed the big contract.
Correct.
A lot of times
Right.
you come in with the new chain on and show everybody you got the new contract.
Doesn't show up at the voluntary OTAs. Shows up for mandatory camp, but he shows up at 260 pounds.
Right.
And
he's listed
at 228.
Right, so he's 32 pounds over his listed weight.
So what I'm reading from multiple sources is that the coaches aren't happy. That the coaches are pretty pissed off about it. To not show up for voluntary. You show up for the voluntary.
And you have a new
ones, you start
coaching
losing-
staff.
Yes, exactly. You have a new coaching staff. You just got a 3-year deal, and you
Right.
show up 32 pounds overweight. You have guys chomping the bit because guess who is on that running back room is Rashad White, who this coaching staff just drafted.
Yeah.
And he's got good hands. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. And don't forget about Keyshawn Vaughn.
No.
He was kind of a forgotten guy, and he was playing behind Ronald Jones, but he showed some sparks, and he showed a little bit of flash, I feel, in the last 2 years. So the fantasy segment for me is, if you can, go out and try to get Rashad White and try to get Keyshawn Vaughn on the cheap. Rashad White's going to cost you a lot more because he's a rookie pick, and he's going in late first round, early second round in rookie drafts. He may be bumped up a little bit more for me. He may be going in that 107, 108 range of your draft instead of the 112, 113, 201. And Keyshawn Vaughn can be had for dirt cheap. You can go get Keyshawn Vaughn right now for a future third round pick. Go out and get those guys just in case something happens with Fournette. I'm sure Fournette will be fine. I'm not trying to sound the alarms and say get rid of him.
Right.
I'm sure he'll be fine. But why not go out and get that insurance guy in case something does happen? And
Right.
the coaching staff might just be like, you know what, I'm not dealing with this. Like, this is ridiculous.
That's a good opportunity to be able to grab one of those guys. Also, from the investment standpoint, a guy like Keyshawn Vaughn is probably a real easy common box, dollar box player that you could pull some cards out, some nice parallels, and maybe even some autos on the cheap and set him aside, because if he does get the touches, he does play. And if that team is successful, and I say if because there's a lot different locker room than it was last year.
Right.
Even though a lot of the same players are coming back, you had players who didn't come back that were huge. They're going to be huge misses. And we just honestly don't know how motivated Tom Brady really is going to be. We don't know if he's playing this contract out to then go get himself another contract.
Don't know.
We know his foot was out the door to Miami.
Correct.
I honestly thought that they should have moved Brady and they should have made the deal with the Dolphins and taken back some draft capital and some players. And didn't.
You got the ring. Go get your future now.
Yeah, and they didn't do it. So I don't know, but because they're like looking at it from a loyalty standpoint.
Right.
It's an interesting time.
A lot of interesting parts moving on in Tampa Bay, though.
So Not a lot in fantasy this week because baseball is kind of at a standstill. There isn't any hockey. There's not any football. Basketball is done. There's no summer league.
LeBron was out there for the...
He was, and we'll definitely talk about that, talk about the summer league. But the Homerun Derby is tonight.
Yeah.
And something that we're going to start doing a little more on this program is spending a little bit more time on the betting angle for you two.
Yeah.
And let's go over the Derby and the Derby matchups and talk about a few things, and then talk about who we've got in the Derby tonight.
Yeah, so I'll go over the matchups first, and then afterwards I'll give you the favorites, odds, and stuff like that. So Kyle Schwarber's matched up with Pujols in the first round. Soto is going to be matched up with Jose Ramirez. Julio Rodriguez, our guy here in Vegas, Julio Rodriguez is going to be matched up with Corey Seager. And then Ronald Acuna is matched up with Pete Alonso. Now, Pete Alonso, I say him last because he's the favorite. He's plus 190. He's the favorite to win this. The next guy, believe it or not, Kyle Schwarber. He's the second place favorite. Kyle Schwarber is plus 330, and then you move on to Juan Soto at plus 600. Julio Rodriguez is plus 700. Acuna is 750, and then you have your three long shots. Seager's plus 1,000. Jose Ramirez is plus 1,800, and Pujols comes in at a right plus 2,400.
So the Pujols thing is interesting because Pujols is the one that has nothing to lose out of this whole deal. He had nothing to lose, right? So he's one that you can run a small bet out there and get a big return on.
$10 gets you $240.
Yes. So a $10 bet on Pujols isn't going to crush you, especially if you're going to go and put something bigger on one of the favorites.
Correct.
Now, there's some interesting thoughts here, okay? You have Julio wanting to basically reiterate what Griffey had done, right? And try to win a home run derby, as a rookie, right? And there's a lot of that talk comparison because they play for the same ball club, right? And all this, and he's doing a lot of similar things that Griffey was doing, home runs.
If he wears hat backwards for home runs.
Oh yeah, I would absolutely do it if I were him to pay homage. I would do it
backwards for the home run
for Griffey, and I would hope Griffey's on the field. Yeah. I would hope that he was an honorary invitee from What I think is interesting here, though, is that there is some guys that have something to actually prove in this, and their odds aren't the top. So Pete Alonso's there to defend, and he is the type of guy that, like, this is my castle, I'm going to defend it. So there's no doubt in my mind he's going balls to the walls there, right? Okay. His first-round matchup, though, I think is a lot tougher than anyone else's,
the best first-round
right?
matchup of all of them.
Right? The thing is, though, is that there's guys that do have things to prove. So first off, we talked about Soto. We talked about the contract. We talked about him not being happy. We talked about the fact he's going to get traded. So why wouldn't you go out and win a home run derby and show off that you're still here, I didn't go anywhere?
Right.
So I think he's the guy that's got the most to gain from winning it. And the second guy is Ronald Acuna. Acuna comes back off of being hurt. Acuna's had a nice comeback to his season. He's back. He's most likely going to be the comeback player of the year, right? However, he doesn't get talked about because there's all these other discussions of the judges and, the stuff that's going on in Major League Baseball. He's kind of like... He's that future face of baseball that's kind of forgotten. It's the same thing with kind of like Tatis right now. Like, Tatis isn't playing. We're not talking about him. So Acuna is a guy that I think he can sit there and be like, this is the time for me to show you guys.
It is because he already knows. He already has his back against the wall because his team went out and won a World Series without him. And I'm not saying they couldn't have used him, but they won without him. So that just shows you that they have enough firepower, or they did at least, to win without a superstar like Acuna. So he may go on there and be like, look, I'm still the guy here. I know my team won without me, but I'm still the guy here. I'm still the face of Atlanta. And go out and have a little chip on shoulder. So I like that pick too. Is that your two picks?
So those are my long shots. Okay. Those are the guys that I think have the most to lose and most to prove, if that I say. Seager is definitely not doing it. Jose Ramirez is not this type of hitter. The fact that he's in there, and I would argue that Oscar Gonzalez from his team would be the guy from his team to actually have done it, and probably should be there. But unfortunately, you're only allowed so many roster spots.
Yeah.
I think overall, with a couple of guys backing out, not willing to participate, Shohei didn't want to participate in it. I think everybody wanted to see Shohei do it.
Mess up your swing,
right?
I've seen guys blow the home run
of course,
and it jacks your swing up, and then you struggle for the next 3 weeks after the All-Star break.
And here's the thing, and this is something that I just didn't understand. Corey Seager gets added to the Home Run Derby in Dodger Stadium. The team that he left.
Yeah.
And you want to do that to him.
Yeah.
Where he's either going to have incredible pressure or it's going to make the team incredibly ticked off in a clubhouse that we, at least here, believe there's some riff within the clubhouse.
Oh, there is,
and now you're going to add more to it.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers were okay with this?
Yeah.
I don't understand what's happening here.
I'm surprised.
Brings us back to the beginning conversation of what is Major League Baseball doing.
Right.
Was there not 5 other guys on the All-Star Game roster we could select from here?
Yeah, and not only that, but there obviously was. He's plus 1,000. It's not like he's a favorite to win.
Right. He's probably going to only hit a couple home runs.
Right. And so and Dodgers fans are probably going to cheer when he only hits a couple of home runs.
Yeah, and they're probably going to boo him when he does. And then, you know what I'm saying? So, I don't know. And then, can Clayton Kershaw be playful with him?
I don't know.
Can he not? Kershaw wanted to be a Ranger.
Yes.
Right? So, like, all this is doing is ripping the Band-Aid off for Dodgers fans on a weekend that, like, there was some nonsense already that occurred because of the fact that you had some things happen like this. So LeBron goes out, plays in the Drew League. Now, am I upset that LeBron played in the Drew League? Not at all.
Don't care.
Don't care. In fact, I think it's amazing. I think it's fun. And you got other players. DeMar DeRozan was there. You have other players that played in it. It was this rumor that Kyrie was going to be there. That was a whole talk for the weekend, right? But once LeBron did this and decided to go do this, how did he not look around and see what's on the schedule?
Right.
I'm curious.
In the same city.
Right? Like, why would you go and make yourself the headline when Major League Baseball has the All-Star Game in your city for the weekend? Show up at the All-Star Game.
Yeah.
Put your arm around the home run champion and get the same reaction.
Isn't Magic Johnson part owner of the Dodgers?
Exactly. And Magic has been a little critical of LeBron, so is this almost like a slap in the face? Like, I could go down this road that this could actually be a bigger damage to the Lakers than Major League Baseball is doing to itself now.
Yeah.
Because they let him steal the show.
Yeah, let him steal the show, and like LeBron doesn't care. He doesn't care about what's going on. Like, if you were to go ask him, like, hey, why are you trying to show up at Major League Baseball? He'd be like, I don't care. Like,
yeah.
He doesn't care.
He'd be like, I went because they wanted me to go play in it.
Yeah.
Very disappointed in it. It was neat to see LeBron put up 42 points.
He was arguing with refs.
Of course.
Like, seriously?
Of course. Because the one thing I'll say is this. He said that it's the most healthy he's been in about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I think it showed. He looked athletic. He was hitting shots. He looked smooth. There's a lot of things that are positive there. If you're a Lakers fan, you're happy to see that. But that was the wrong place to showcase it. Right? Go out to the Dream Court on a Sunday evening and hoop up with 5 guys. Go viral on Instagram.
Somebody record it and put it on YouTube. Yeah.
Right? Don't do that. But let's talk about the guys that should be talked about, and that is the Summer League wrapped up here in Las Vegas. Really good Summer League this year. You had a lot of the top picks did play. They played a couple of games. You got to see the matchups against each other.
The night you were going to go.
Yeah, of course.
You were going to go as the number 1 versus number 3 pick. Number 1 versus number 2 pick.
Yeah.
And then was it
Benchero and Holmgren were supposed to play against each other. Chat Holmgren obviously stole the show for majority of the Summer League. But Benchero obviously.
Half an hour before you bought tickets.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest with you. Like, they were so happy with how well he had played and how quickly he adapted.
Yeah.
Which tells you guys that Banchero was everything you expected and more. they shut it down just because they're like, we need to look at other guys.
They don't want. Well, not only that, but you risk injury because one other pick got hurt, and so it's like you risk injury, and that's kind of what some
other teams have different. Every team has different philosophies, right? Because we'll talk about there's the Magic's philosophy, right? The Magic's philosophy was let's take our guy off the court, let's give other guys a chance. Yeah. We'll get everyone to kind of gel together. The Thunder on the other side had Josh Giddey on the floor. You had Jonathan Kuminga playing for the Warriors. Yeah. You had this guy rise up. James Wiseman being in 4 or 5 games, showing that he's ready to play and he's good to go. Very agile, looked very athletic. I would say that's a scary thing for anybody who is in the in the West, because of the fact that team without spending any more money got better.
They didn't go get a big free agent signee.
And Kuminga played, and Kuminga looked good. So, this summer league was a lot of fun. It was really neat. It wasn't just the star-studded, so-and-so showed up, because that was usually all the headlines were. Every year. This year, it actually did get a little bit of run.
With the players.
Which was great. So that was neat. I was glad to see it. And, of course, we got to go and mention that that Magic team that did not have Banchero on it lost in the championship game of the Summer League to the Portland Trailblazers. Yeah. In perfect Portland fashion, low-scoring game.
Yeah.
But they did.
Exciting.
They did. And not very nice jersey. Right. Don't like their jersey right now. But, that was pretty cool. It was great to see. So, NFL talk. Yeah. We got a few things to go over in the NFL. One of those is this guy had something to say this weekend. Justin Jefferson came out and he said what?
He basically said that Devontae Adams, he gave props to Devontae Adams that he was going to be the best, receiver in the NFL. He goes, but it probably won't be by the end of the year because I plan on that being me, in so many words. So he's basically going out on record saying that he is going to be the best wide receiver in the NFL. He's already been talking this whole offseason about how we're not a run-first team anymore, we're a pass-first offense. He's given praise even Kirk Cousins, which was, odd because, he wasn't giving him props before, like his rookie season.
Right.
So they look like they're primed and ready, and Justin Jefferson is basically going out on a limb and saying, like, we're not going to be the same Minnesota Vikings we've been in the past.
Well, and there's these discussions, so let's get into it. The people are talking about that division. Yeah. And now all of a sudden,
up for grabs.
The Vikings are becoming this viable team, expected to do big things. People are saying Kirk Cousins could have an MVP year because he's had so many knocks on him, because he really did get knocked around even when he came out for, the Pro Bowl out here. Yeah. He was talked down tremendously. We all know on anybody who follows anything that I do said that he's the biggest thief in the NFL. Oh, yeah. But at this point, is that fathomable? Is it believable? And the only thing I can say is this, right? In the NFC, we're not saying that we believe Tampa Bay is a favorite. I don't know that anybody in this room thinks that the Rams will repeat. In fact, there's argumentatively people think that the Niners are the best team in their division.
Yeah, the one thing that scares me too about it is I think the whole division's up for grabs, obviously, especially with Aaron Rodgers losing all his receivers. Mm-hmm. He's got a bunch of rookies there, basically, and Alan Lazard. Sammy Watkins is on the roster bubble. I don't think he makes it. It was a nice signing in the offseason, but I don't think he's going to make it. So that division is up for grabs, and I think the conference is basically up for grabs because you have a lot of teams that got better, and the really good teams kind of took a step back. So I think there's not going to be that one team that goes out there and just dominates and has like a 13-3 record or 13-4 record. It's going to be a different story this year, and I think that, like you said, there could be the Rams could be up there, Tampa Bay could be up there, Minnesota could surprise a lot of people. Detroit, I think, got better.
Detroit definitely got better for sure.
Like there's a lot of teams that.
It's just whether their quarterback can lead it. Whereas when he was in LA, he was able to let the defense lead it. Right. That's not the case here. Their defense got better. They've got good offensive players and tools. I think for the sneaky plays, because people are trying to make the Vikings a sneaky play. In my opinion, the sneaky plays for me are going to be the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are going to probably trample their over number. I also believe that the Saints probably win the NFC this year. And then your Cowboys are really good and should definitely be up there. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see an NFC Championship game of Cowboys-Saints. I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised at that, but every year I get the feeling that the Cowboys are paper champions.
But I don't ever talk about the Cowboys. You know that, so I'm telling you that just because of how not good the NFC is, that could absolutely happen.
Saints defense is no joke.
Right. The Saints defense is disgusting, and it's gotten better. It's gotten better. They got Honey Badger. Like, they added him on top of everything else.
He's good.
But, again, that could be a thing. And then the AFC, obviously, is a juggernaut. Mm-hmm. And the team that represented the AFC in the Super Bowl this year, they put out, I guess we'll call this an announcement?
Over 50 years, Bengal tigers have roamed the Cincinnati jungle, renowned around the world for their unique stripes and ferocious play.
When you're wearing a helmet like that, it's one of those situations you either got to put up or shut up.
But recently, photo crews captured rare footage of a new and exotic Bengal species spotted right here in the jungle.
So the Bengals are doing something really fun.
I can't wait to see that.
That's a team that doesn't do this, right? That they've been very, like, if you go back and you look at the Bengals in the 80s, outside of some bigger shoulder pads and maybe some bigger numbers, those jerseys look the same, right? You had a little bit of inserts from time to time that they changed, but that nothing's really changed that much. So apparently this week we are going to get introduced to an all-white Bengals helmet. Whether that's going to be orange stripes, black stripes,
not sure.
Doesn't matter. I think it's going to be a really cool thing. And it was something that on a brand standpoint I think is really, really huge, and something that I definitely want to talk about today a little bit more in depth about brand and opportunities and all that. And that is that last year, the biggest talked about discussion was the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow connection.
Yeah.
And when you have a really good quarterback, you have a wide receiver there that can be discussed. If Justin Jefferson was taking throws from Zach Wilson, we would be talking about that nonstop, right? 100%. But it's just the fact that Kirk Cousins, and a lot of people don't believe in him. Nevertheless, I think that that's an important conversation for us to have when it comes to investment. So let's get into plus or minus. This is the portion of the program where we talk about investments and talk about things that we see and opportunities for you guys in the sports card market. And I want to touch base. This is really interesting. We're going to run through a lot today really quickly, but I want to talk about that there are players that you have a huge opportunity to get into with situations that could become incredibly instrumental for you to gain some really good value in. And the first one I want to talk about is that team we mentioned from the NFC North, the Detroit Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown. This card right here, this auto, is available right now for $60. You can buy this card for $60. Pink parallel auto, Prism auto for $60 for Amon-Ra. Okay. Now, why is that such a big deal to me? Because I believe that he will take a step up. I believe that Jared Goff is a lot more comfortable with him, and that what's going to happen is that if they are winning in a division that we believe there are wins in, people will start talking about Jared Goff, and they'll start talking about his receiver. And because the draft class for quarterbacks was down this year, it's my opinion we're going to be talking a lot about wide receivers. He took a step up. He's a guy that's going to take a major step up. We saw this happen with Gabriel Davis. Gabriel Davis, I looked today just to see, Gabriel Davis autos are averaging across the board around 250. And you can buy a Prism Pink auto of Amon-Ra for $60. I don't say walk, I say run, and get yourself a couple of really nice Amon-Ra St. Brown cards. because you can get them incredibly cheap right now, and the risk to reward could be huge. You could be looking at week 8 of the season at a 3 to 5x card.
And that's your point to sell. Because this is
exactly
going to happen. We talked about this before, and
yes.
I kind of relate this with fantasy football, and that's kind of how I go and base stuff off of. Is St. Brown will be the guy. Jamison Williams got drafted by the Detroit Lions
Correct.
in the first round.
Yeah.
If you're a Jamison Williams believer, which a lot of people are,
yeah.
Including myself, St. Brown took a little hit.
Yeah.
Not much, but he took a little bit of a hit. Because now they're basically like, oh damn, they basically brought this guy in to be the number 1. St. Brown's going to stay in the slot, yada, yada, yada. So at the beginning of the season, they're not going to have Williams. So you go out and you get St. Brown, and you're going to see the guy have the same chemistry he did with Goff at the end of last year. He's going to be the guy. Now, when Jamison Williams does come back, he may take a little bump again. Yeah. Especially if they start peppering Williams with targets.
Well, and there's this conversation, too, for me, and this side, which is easily forgotten, which is, aren't they the team that's going to be featured on HBO?
Yes, they're the.
So if they're going to be on Hard Knocks, then we know that they're going to get looks, and people are going to start talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're going to talk about how he looks in camp. They're going to talk about how exciting and flashy he is because they do everything in the storyline there to make sure they point out the best of the best.
Oh, geez, they point out guys that you start falling in love with. You're like, man, this guy is awesome, and then all of a sudden he gets cut, and you're like, what the hell?
Could see Amon-Ra have a huge increase just during that portion before we even get to the season. So right now is a good opportunity for you to do that. I've got 2 other names for you. One I'm just going to mention as a side note, and that is Terence Marshall. I think Terence Marshall is probably a fairly good buy for you right now because of the fact that with Baker Mayfield, I think that his numbers are much better than if Sam Darnold was there. I think if Sam Darnold's there, it's a running team. I think if Baker is there, it'll be a running, but they'll have a lot of movement. They'll go ahead and move the pocket. They will throw play action a little bit more. I think that those are going to be the guys that they're going to that have an opportunity. I think that Terence Marshall has a chance to really take a step up. And let's talk about it. If they win in the NFC North, right, against the Saints defense. Right?
The South.
The South.
Yeah.
If they win against the Saints defense, they're going to be talked about a lot. And you can't tell me the Baker's not playing with a chip on his shoulder. I think there's an opportunity here that you could see a nice uptick from him. But the other guy I really want to talk about, and it's because who has the most to prove? Where there's smoke, there's fire, and that is. You have an organization that probably had a meeting last week that said, look, we just shelled out a ton of money on paying people money for stuff we didn't do. And we don't want any of that. We want a product on the football field. We want your heads down. We want the best out of you. Every single one in this locker room, you're going to be questioned and peppered all year long about Deshaun Watson. And that is the Texans and Nico Collins. Nico Collins is so grossly underpriced right now because it's our belief, my belief, and I believe a lot of other people think that Davis Mills is taking a step up, even though I already saw him take a step up. I think he takes even a bigger step up. I think he's a really nice player, and I think he's going to be able to get the ball in this guy's hands. And this guy is going to get a lot of targets this year. I think Nico Collins is a really sneaky opportunity for you as an investment. This Pulsar right here, this thing's numbered to I don't even remember what it's numbered to. It's a low number. $12.
Yeah.
$12. Guys, skip Starbucks tomorrow. Buy yourself a nice Nico Collins, stash it away, right? Stash it away and have an opportunity to maybe really be able to take advantage. Now, I told you I wanted to move quick through this stuff. The last guy I want to mention today, Tua Tagovailoa. Because of all the talk of everything, especially with Deshaun Watson and all that stuff, the offseason quieted a little bit for the Dolphins, which is a nice thing. We're about to come into camp. Raiders are reporting this week because they're playing in the Hall of Fame game, and then you got teams reporting over the next 7 to 10 days. Once they report and there's footage on him throwing the ball to Gesicki, throwing the ball to Waddle, throwing the ball to Tyreek Hill in camp, I believe that you are going to see a huge uptick into Tua. Tua's up a little bit, but he's not nearly up what we expected he would be by the start of the season. I don't think we even thought he'd be there. He's tiptoeing still with Hurts style numbers. Like he's tiptoeing in there that people are kind of almost favoriting Hurts a little bit because Hurts did play nice, did play well. But again, Tua, he is one of those guys that could be a poster child if things go well for him and Dolphins are kicking and moving, and especially if they go and they beat up on the Patriots in Foxborough or something like that. Guys, Tua could be an absolute great investment for you. I don't see you'll see the return of, say, like the Nico Collins of buying it at 12 and, potentially flipping that card for $200.
No, he's a quarterback, so it's going to be a little higher price.
But you're going to pay a little bit more for Tua, but it's going to be a little bit better term investment. And then from our betting angles we discussed, I think this is a super sneaky sleeper for MVP this year, is to grab Tua, because if that team's winning, he's going to be the guy that's going to be talked about, and he might be in the MVP conversation because of it. Reminds me of Lamar Jackson a few years ago when he won his MVP.
Yeah.
Right?
And the team didn't win the Super Bowl, but he still won the MVP.
But he still won the MVP. So it is a thing to discuss. So a lot for you as far as the investment standpoint goes. The last one I did say I was going to bring back and mention really quick was talking about Gunnar Henderson. Gunnar Henderson of the Baltimore Orioles. I don't know that we'll see him up this year. Jorge Mateo's playing really well. He's probably not going to do the big leagues till next year. He is starting to become a little bit of a hobby darling. This auto right here is going between $200 and $250. I still think he's a buy, but I think you're buying him to flip him when he makes his major league appearance. I don't think you're buying him to see him become a big major leaguer.
All-star.
Even if he gives you 2 years and you sell it and then you probably could have sold it for another 40% more, I believe that you're best suited to, as our buddy at Roth Cards would say, take the money and run, right? You can buy this card again for $250. This card is on the market for $500 for a to $499 refractor. When I told you to buy Adley Rutschman refractors to $499 were at $700.
Wow.
Gunner's a shortstop, not a catcher.
Right.
So just remember that shortstops are always going to demand a higher premium.
Yes.
So you're literally buying him at half of that value that I was telling you to buy Adley at. The thing is, though, is that once this kid makes the major leagues, you might want to see what the team is doing with their draft pick this year. Because if Jackson is being moved through the system, then that means that they're pushing for him to play shortstop, and Gunner's only going to be there temporarily. If they move Jackson, then you'll know by the time Gunner gets to the big leagues where you're at with him. So I think he's a good buy right now, and I think you can buy raw right now to grade, which will save you a ton, because I don't think that a lot of people had graded Gunnar Henderson to this point. Was kind of my whole point with Robert Hassel a few weeks ago, how people hadn't really graded a ton of Robert Hassel, but we're starting to. Here we are. This is a good opportunity for you. You are getting him on a little bit of an increase. There is a little bit of an increase in the market. He is visible. He showed up on a bunch of prospect lists, and that got people kind of excited. And then just as a side note, I would just like to mention that off of Garrett Cole, Jeter Downs hit a home run yesterday. Just like I told you was going to happen, they were going to trickle him in, and then if they do move Bogarts, which I think is still a real possibility, he's going to be the shortstop and get an opportunity there. I invested into Jeter Downs for this year, hoping that this team will actually make a move and we will see some visibility out of him up into the playoffs. That's when I will sell him. Yep. So that's what I got for you guys. A lot of information on plus or minus. I know it was packed together pretty quick, but I think there was some things for us to definitely look at and take an opportunity with. So, guys, we'll be back next week. We will not have the Godfather. We might have a Johnny Rip appearance. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
We might. We'll see.
We'll
see. If not, I think we'll have Hoodie on. So we'll bring Hoodie out and have him come out and kind of sit with us. He would have loved for us to talk about the Saints, and I think next week we'll probably be talking about the start of camps, and we'll be talking about teams anyways. So we wanted to go ahead and bring him in anyways
to the Saints this week, and we'll
let him have his 5 minutes with the Saints. But guys, make sure you guys have gone and joined us on the different platforms. Jay Up and I will be on Whatnot today. We will be on this afternoon, a little after 1 o'clock. Go bookmark the show. Go to Whatnot, GameDay LV. Give us a follow there. And then, of course, we're also live on Drip. And you guys can go to our social profiles. You can be able to find the links for $10 in break credit for Drip that you can spend on the app with us. So you can come in and get $10 for free. All you got to do is download the app, but use that link. It's the only way you can get it. But make sure you guys do that. And I'll go ahead and get that link pasted up in the body here on our social medias for you guys and get that done. So anyways, guys, from Las Vegas, it's beautiful. That's right. He got to say it this time. Guys, see ya. Let's go.
Game Day Sports Cards in Las Vegas is now streaming on the Drip app. Make sure you download Drip by visiting dripshop.live or follow the link in the description